Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Elligan, a clinical psychologist based in Chicago, Illinois, and this is Everyday Psychology. Today we're going to talk a bit about some recent surveys that have been done with parents about what are some of the most important things for them with respect to parenting. And most of these surveys have found that many parents would like to raise happy children. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what are some factors that parents can incorporate into their parenting style that may help them raise happy, healthy children. The optimal situation is to have a set of parenting strategies in place, and think about this before birth, so that you can be consistent with your parenting strategies through the course of the child's childhood, basically. With that said, one of the most important factors, I think, with raising happy children is you start with happy parents. The parents have to be happy. And we've talked about factors that contribute to happiness in a previous episode of Everyday Psychology, but very important for parents to be happy. Other things to consider with happiness is that children, as I mentioned earlier, are learning a lot of information from birth on through a good part of their childhood through modeling and observational learning. So very important for parents to model a lot of these qualities that they want to see in their child, and be consistent in how they are modeling these qualities, and as much as possible be authentic. So you really want to do this for yourself, not for your child, and one of the offshots or benefits of doing this for yourself, of developing this happiness from within for yourself, is that hopefully it becomes a bit contagious and it rubs off on your child. Okay? So keep it in mind, consistency is very important, and that children are learning a lot of information through observational learning. Children are also learning a lot of information through reinforcement. So very important to try to utilize as much positive reinforcement as possible in the process of raising children. And what I mean by that is encourage them to pursue their own interest and reinforce those interests. Even though those interests may not be the parent's interest, it's probably a lot better and more healthy for the developing child to know that their parents support their interests and they give them positive reinforcement for having their own interests, so that they will have multiple interests and pursue lots of different things as they're growing up, as opposed to being concerned and worried about sharing things with parents because they're not sure how they're going to receive it. So you want to try to have genuine positive reinforcement. And the positive reinforcement should be very specific. When you're reinforcing something, try to break it down, deconstruct it so that it's very specific to a specific behavior or interest that the child is engaged in. Other factors that are very important, being actively involved with your child. And once again, keep in mind, I'm talking about children at an early age in development, but this continues on through middle childhood and adolescence. But you want to be playful, and you want to engage with them. So you don't want to just simply take your child to the park and sit on the park bench and watch them play in the sandbox. You want to engage with them and get in the sandbox and have fun with them and laugh with them and be silly and play with some of their toys, because you're developing a strong relationship with them. So you want to be actively engaged and get your fingers dirty, get your hands dirty, and do some silly stuff that we typically wouldn't do as adults, but that is one of the gifts of having children, that they help us open up our milieu of things to do. So, want to be playful, want to be silly, want to have laughter, and engage with them at their level. Also, if you look at a lot of the developmental psychologists, Erikson in particular, he has a lot of different stages that he talks about for development of children. But if you sum them all up, basically what Erikson is saying is that at each stage of development, the primary goal is to help the child become confident and self-reliant, because they're constantly being challenged at different stages of life with different conflicts, but you want to continue to help them feel confident and self-reliant. Once again, another one of the positive benefits of positive reinforcement. So encouraging them to pursue their interests, and despite which stage of development they're in, encouraging them to feel good about themselves, and pursue their interests. All right, so promoting confidence, very important. It's also important for children, happy children, to have multiple interests as opposed to just focusing myopically on one interest. Some research has found that it tends to be better for children to have multiple interests and pursue all of them, especially at an early age, because their interests are constantly changing, and promote those interests. The other thing, children are very spontaneous, so parents need to be spontaneous. So children may be playing with one toy 1 minute, want to play with another toy another minute, and it's good to kind of go with that spontaneity. Once again, kind of promoting that self-confidence and that self-reliance and that creative thinking that children are kind of blessed with, and that sometimes runs a little dry with adults. So try to be spontaneous, follow their lead. Another important factor is responsive listening. I mentioned this in another episode of Everyday Psychology on relationships, but responsive listening is simply listening to some of the feedback you're getting from your child, not just reflecting it back to them, but being responsive. So if they say to you, for instance, my son oftentimes will say, "Dad, let's go for a bike ride." It's not good enough for me just to say, "I hear you, you want to go for a bike ride," and not go for a bike ride with them, or say, "All right, we'll go for a bike ride tomorrow," or the next day. When they're asking you to do something and you're having responsive listening, if you're going to be an actively involved parent who's trying to raise happy children, you want to be as responsive as possible. Obviously, children may ask you to do things at times that aren't the most appropriate. Like if it's bedtime, you're not going to say, "Okay, let's go for a bike ride at bedtime and we'll go to bed 5 hours later or 3 hours later." But if they're asking you at an appropriate time, probably a good idea to be responsive, try to go for it. So in review, we want to be playful, silly, have lots of laughter, have responsive listening, promote confidence, use lots of positive reinforcement, have some spontaneity, and have lots of qualities that lead to happiness in our own life so that we can model these attributes for our children. So once again, I'm Dr. Elligan. This is Everyday Psychology. Today we were talking a bit about factors that may help promote raising happy children.